episode of the All Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Bowen and I'm happy to introduce my three co-hosts. We have Daniel, Abdul, and Marco. How's it going today, guys?
Going well. It's going well.
Yeah, man.
Good.
I'm here.
Now, we all just got done watching episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Dance. None of us live in the U.S. We were unable to watch it yesterday, but it was kind of nice. We could wake up, watch it on our own, pause, rewind, see all the good parts. And we're just going to jump right into it. Daniel, your early takeaways from episodes 3 and 4.
Yeah, so obviously there are a number of amazing things in the episode focusing on Rodman. But one thing I want to talk about first, actually, is just about Doug Collins. So when he took over the Bulls, they weren't doing so well. And he brings Jordan to new heights, the team to new heights to become, Jordan says we turned into a winning franchise. And he ends up getting fired over the triangle mostly. And I just thought that was so interesting because Michael loved him. And would you ever see that today? Like, picture LeBron and a coach having an incredible relationship and the GM's looking at it and being like, no, we actually don't like the way things are going here. We're going to take your beloved coach away from you. So that was one of my biggest takeaways.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess now it's more into a player empowerment era, but obviously Jordan had the most power known to mankind at that point, and he was successful. But Jerry Krause was really, really a huge part of that whole front office. It seemed that he almost dominated more than Jerry Reinsdorf from what you're seeing, because it was all kind of on his dime of I want this coach, I want this player, this is what's happening. If you don't like it, you're kind of getting fired, right?
I think on his end too, he had so much belief in what he was capable of doing as far as building that team. And back then as well, there wasn't the whole idea of, but this player loves this guy, I shouldn't do this. You know what I mean? It was so different, as far as the way things were run. Front offices did their jobs, players did their jobs. That's kind of where it started and ended. And
yeah, the separation of powers was more clear cut. You had the ownership hiring the GM and trusting him to do what he had to do, and then the players just had to follow what the GM wanted. I was just thinking specifically about Kenny Atkinson got fired, and everyone's saying that's because of Katie and Kyrie, and now Ty Lue is rumored to take the job, and that's a guy who Kyrie likes. So it's a completely different contrast.
I feel we still have some sort of that. If you think about, for example, the Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie Irving trade, it was kind of like that, business related only because Boston loved Isaiah and they traded him because they thought it was better for the team. But yes, this is very rare in the NBA these days. And it's kind of interesting looking back because they kind of took approach to the game that was much more business related than anything related to the relationship. Because Michael didn't even like Phil Jackson in the first year.
Yeah, because that whole dynamic was Jordan was the most dominant player in the league, and Doug Collins was feeding that as far as we're gonna run it through Michael, whereas Phil was we're gonna run this offense, which there's always some sort of a mix up. It always happens in sports where there's always some sort of a mix up with that stuff. Different coaches or you have certain players that could do certain things and a new coach is brought in. It's you need to run it this way so that this player feels comfortable, or it's the coach. There's a coach that one of those figures. There aren't too many of them that come around, but it's they implement a system and everybody needs to buy into it, which was what Phil did. And that was also the reason Phil was so successful as a coach, because he managed to get guys to buy into what he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's Scotty Bowman comes to mind for hockey. A lot of star players would be putting up crazy numbers but not winning, and then a team would hire him, and maybe that guy's numbers would go down, but then they'd start winning because they're playing his system.
Yeah,
just a quick thought on the numbers. Michael under Doug Collins, he had 34.9 points per game in his 3 seasons with him. And with Phil, in his first 4 seasons, he had 31.9 points. It was 3 points less. But that's interesting to see that the numbers really translated what the game was, the change in style meant.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to get Jerry Kosa's look on things. I mean, obviously he passed away, so you couldn't get his perspective. But it would have been interesting to hear what he would have said about his reasoning behind making those decisions. Because, yeah, Collins was a great coach, and Phil Jackson initially, it was just like that little part where he said in his book Maverick, where he dropped acid. Like that was just hilarious. It's like I don't know about now if a coach is going to get hired if they publicly state that they've done acid, that a president would hire him. But that was just
Yeah, like the thing is,
NBA. But
sorry.
go ahead.
Like having read like Phil Jackson's like autobiography, like it's crazy like to see, because people know of him as like this great coach. Like he got Jordan to this spot, he got Shaq and Kobe to this place. But like I loved how much they put like an emphasis on like how different of a person like Phil was himself, and like how accepting he was of like players being a certain way and working around that. Like he worked more around like personalities rather than like play style, as far as like honing in on that. Like he really like connected with guys and got guys to connect with each other to be able to like create a winning culture. And like he himself was like even in the case of like Dennis Rodman, which I know people were like, oh my God, Dennis was like this, but it was like Phil was also like his own like entire different personality from like most of the guys in the NBA himself. And like
Yeah.
people didn't know enough about that.
And going back to when Rodman requested that vacation,
Yeah.
the air quotes to Vegas, like when would that occur now, right? I doubt it. Should be like, go get, as drunk as possible, have a good time and come back. But he knew that, like when Jordan was talking about the Indian drill, when he just came back and he's running like a gazelle, it's like, okay, I guess he clearly knew his player's personality way, way more.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting because I think there are some players. I go to Brazil, which is where I live, and to soccer, because Ronaldinho in the 2006 World Cup, where he had a terrible World Cup. Many people say he should have had some vacation like that before the World Cup. Had just won the Champions League, and then they had to go straight to Germany to play. And people say that if he had like 2 or 3 days off, maybe he would have a better performance. So that's kind of interesting to think about. If some players don't work better with that, you kind of like a child work, like give them something so that they will give you something back.
Yeah, that's funny. Like Rodman has this kind of crazy season where he feels he needs to take a break, and it ends up going however many more hours than 48. In that season, he's 36, and he has to get pulled out of bed to go to practice, and he ends up with like 16 boards a game that year, something like that. He led the league in rebounds. 36 years old.
Oh.
Thing is, like, if you think about it too, though, like at that time, like the idea of players completely just committing themselves to the sport alone was still like that evolution was like still going on. Because like if you go back like decades further back, like there were guys who did way more things, and like they're not like today's day and age of guys, right? Where people are like, why aren't you working out the whole day? You should be doing this. Why are you doing this? And the thing is too, like the special thing with like Rodman was that like even though he did those things, like he always showed up in shape, and like people didn't know like how hard he actually worked. Like there are stories out there about like Rodman doing like full on like cardio sessions post game, like on the Stairmaster and whatnot, like just to keep in shape. And he was in so much better shape than a lot of guys too, because like the energy he played with and like the hustle he played with was like outstanding.
And probably the best teammate ever. I mean, when you call people and say, I want you guys to shoot the ball and I'm just going to rebound all day. I mean, like, as a practice, that's amazing, right? You'd 100%
I think everyone would love someone like that in their team,
Yeah, definitely.
Like, just as a friend, that would be great. Hey, man, let's just play some basketball. I shoot, you take the rebound. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect, isn't it?
Like the thing is too though, like I don't think I've ever heard of someone like practicing rebounding, especially like in that way, where like you're actually studying like the angles of the ball, like because like most guys like they'll get in shape, they'll work on their offensive game. Like boards are something like you do like film study on and like you may do in practice as far as like you work on like positioning and whatnot. But like I haven't heard of anyone saying like I need you to shoot the ball so I could practice and study the angles the ball goes off of. I was like sitting there like, shit, where do you do this? Like I didn't know this was a thing.
Yeah, that was awesome. Just he's talking about, oh, Larry Bird's shooting, it's got a lot of spin on it, so it's gonna go a certain way. Like I loved that sequence where they're just showing him like,
Oh yeah.
pointing different directions. Oh, grab it here. Oh, it's gonna go here. That was great.
And his jumping ability, you see him like jump twice in the time that some guy jumps once, and the ability to just tap it, finally grab it. I mean, that's just innate ability that you're born with, I think. I don't think you can teach that kind of skill.
He was not a very tall player. That's something that people kind of forget. He was a bit taller than MJ. He was 6'7", at least 6'7". So maybe pound for pound, he's the best rebounder ever if you go by that measure. When you think that Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain has such a physical advantage against the guys that they played against.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to like, in terms of comparables now, I guess you could say it's like a Draymond Green.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, the first line of episode 3, I'm pretty sure it was like the first line was Rodman talking about like, I don't know if they could have won championships without me. Like he's talking about Jordan and Pippen and saying, I don't know, they didn't do what I did. They probably couldn't have won without me. And it made me think of what Draymond recently said on the Smoke podcast, being like, oh, I changed the basketball with the help of Steph Curry. But then also saying like, Steph Curry changed the basketball with the help of me. And I think what he meant to say was similar to what Rodman said. Like, basically, he just couldn't have done it without me.
Yeah.
So that was funny.
3 before, right? Like Pippen and Jordan won 3 without him before that.
That's true. That's a difference. I also like, when I looked up like comparing just Draymond and Rodman on Basketball Reference. They're different players. Like,
yeah,
they're similar in the sense that they did the things that their star players on their teams didn't do. But Draymond's averaging like 7 assists a game. Rodman wasn't doing that, and Draymond's not getting 18 boards a game either. So,
Draymond's a better scorer as well. He had some good outbursts, like in 2016 NBA Finals. He was pretty good in that one.
That's true.
So they are very different, but the value that they have for their teams, I think it's kind of similar. That's a very good point.
Yeah, like I think it's more so like the idea of like them being like the heartbeats to their team. Like, I know the Bulls won the first 3 without Rodman, but like the way their lineup changed and everything, and like the energy boost that they needed, especially with like Jordan getting older and whatnot, it was like, not saying he declined, but like they needed someone to be like that spark plug. Whereas like with Golden State, it's like the same thing. Like Draymond's impact on offense is obviously way different than Rodman's, but like Rodman was like if you think about defensively, like how good the Bulls were and how much better Rodman made them, because like they had Ron Harper, Jordan, Pippen, and then Rodman like 1 through 4, and then you have Jordan who could guard like 1 through 3, and Pippen who could guard 1 through 3 as well at least.
Like
Rodman could guard almost every. Yeah. I'm like, you get the idea. Like Rodman could guard almost every position, and him and Pippen were like the same size, and it was just like ridiculous to think about.
Yeah. So segueing a bit, Marco wanted to talk a little bit about Scottie Pippen. So I guess Scottie Pippen, how good was he? Because he was always a sidekick to MJ, and when he had his own team, he did well. Like he did well in the retirement years. He was a win before the finals, and he had his own team in Portland, but he was kind of older at that point. Like, what do you guys think from watching? There was a second episode about Scottie Pippen.
I think that like
I said to you guys before, here in Brazil, Scottie just took a bump in popularity after the first 2 episodes because people didn't know much about him, and now they think he was like almost as good as MJ, which is definitely not true. But Scotty was great. That's something that sometimes it gets like forgotten. His averages with MJ were always really good, and he led the Bulls when the first year that MJ was not there, 1994. I think they went to the conference finals that year. They were pretty good without MJ, and then they fell off the next year. But I mean, maybe he was never an MVP caliber player, but maybe if he did not have MJ, he could have been that. But you could argue that MJ helped him get to the level that he got. So that's a very strange conversation when he never had time in his prime alone, you know?
I think
the thing.
he was like an MVP caliber player, even without Jordan. Like I know that year he was in the years that Jordan was gone. Like he was in the conversation. As you said, he got into the conference final without that. The second episode though definitely inflated how good he was.
Okay.
I mean, he was incredible, but I think watching that painted him as if he was like a top 10 player all time. Which so like as you said, Marco, people we're talking about how he was maybe as good as Jordan, but that's not even true at all.
I think
his numbers in the year that the first year Jordan wasn't there, had 22 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, and 5.6 assists. That's pretty good, but that's not MVP caliber. He was fourth in the voting, okay? But like just by stat line, that's not like MVP like numbers.
I think it is. I mean, including if you talk about the impact he'd have on the defensive end as well.
Yeah,
that's like earlier Kawhi numbers, and in the 90s when like games have an average of much lower scoring than now, right?
80s, 90s, yeah.
Yeah.
Thing is too though, like when you're like a star player but you're like sidekick, you don't really get like the credit you may deserve. And like it's also like a difference in like eras, because like for some people like they didn't get to watch Pippen play, or for a lot of people probably watching, especially like the younger generations, or even like our generation. Like I was born in '96, like I never got to really watch Pippen play. Like it's so different as far as like what you remember or what you saw, unless you actually like really studied and like took a deep dive into it. But even then, like it's different because like the people who got to live through it and actually watch it could only really like describe it best, if you know what I mean. Like in that, like you got to hear like a couple of interviews like where they said Pippen was like one of the best players in the league, whereas like now people would just think of Pippen as like, oh, he's a sidekick. And if you want to bring up like the whole GOAT debate, whatever, they're like, it's mostly just remembered as like they couldn't win without each other regarding like Jordan and Pippen. But like the numbers also are another thing, because like we live in a day and age where like stats are like almost everything. So, and Pippins don't really like jump out at you that way.
Mm.
So like his impact like isn't really as known. Like he's one of those guys where like you had to like really watch him play to understand it. And like there are players like that. Like I'm sure there are players now that people like who are gonna be our age or younger by the time, and we're old heads, it'll be like, but this player sucked, yada yada yada. Like I'm sure someone will look at Draymond and be like, oh,
Yeah.
this guy was like utter garbage. Like how could he ever claim that he was even like that serious a player or whatever? But like meanwhile he's like their third best player. He's their anchor on defense. Like name it. You know what I mean?
But you know, there are people right now who they discredited Draymond Green. You know, a lot of people don't like him at all as a player, and he was vital for the Golden State Warriors 3 championship. And we're like 1 year removed from that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so imagine 20 years from now.
Yeah, because they look at his 3-point shooting percentage and think, you know, this guy's crap. But
and he does a lot of talking and like kicking in the nuts, like, you know, like, there's a lot of other stuff that people bring up, which rightfully so, right?
yeah, he's annoying as hell. And I mean, that maybe is something that's similar with Rodman. I don't know how people felt towards Rodman at the time, whether they felt he was annoying. He seemed maybe a bit more quiet, like to the media, like he didn't want to talk to them as much, but I don't know.
He was very erratic from what I can tell. I watched this 30 for 30 documentary on him, and it was really interesting to see how he came up and the fact that he was like a child his first couple of years in the league. Like it was Chuck Daly, the coach of the Pistons, pretty much like was his father figure because he didn't have a father back home. So I think it was love, but then he fed into that bad boy image, and the Spurs happened, and he went all crazy, you know, like out in nightclubs. So definitely like a volatile kind of personality, I'd say. So Abdul, you have a big takeaway from the episodes?
Let's see. I like the Phil part a lot. Another thing I would say. Okay. So it's the walkaways from the Pistons when they lost to the Bulls.
Oh yeah, okay.
I felt like, in that sense, like people really got to like get in it. Obviously, like it was mentioned in the first two episodes and whatnot, but like as far as like the rivalry they had, but like rivalries were like so real, like to even like the players like back then. You know what I mean? Like it kind of like died off. I want to say like a few years ago, maybe at least or something. Like they weren't as serious or as personal to players, if you get what I mean. Like players weren't taking the rivalry like they don't, because so many guys are like friendly and whatnot in the league. Like they may be rivals and want to beat each other. I'm not saying they're not as competitive. They are like competitive, but like everything was like personal to the point where like it's not like they were being buddy buddy and everything, and like not wanting to shake hands. And then Isaiah also pointing out how the Celtics walked off on them when the Pistons finally overtook them was something that was kind of like enlightening, I guess you could say, because like people just remember the walk off by the Pistons, and then Isaiah kind of pointing to the Celtics kind of gives you like an idea as to like where that came from. You know what I mean?
I think that was weaker though.
Yeah.
Oh, so they did it, so then you did it. I was like, wow, like that doesn't make me feel better about you. That just makes and like, you know, yeah, Isaiah, it says kind of similar to what you just said, like, oh, nowadays players will be buddy buddy. Back then it was no, like that was how it was. You walked off the court, and then when they show that video to Jordan, they show the clip of Isaiah talking, and it's hilarious. But Jordan then just goes, the 2 years before we walked up to him and shook his hand.
Yeah.
So he just made Isaiah look so bad.
I mean, what Abdul said, like they are still very bitter with each other, like Michael and Isaiah. You can see that. Like,
yeah.
You don't have to say anything. Just the way that if you say Isaiah to Jordan, he already like his eyes go down. It's kind of strange.
When he left him off the dream team, right?
Yeah.
That was the big thing.
I think we'll have that in episode 5, actually. I think they're going to talk more about that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, they fed into that bad boy Pistons thing, but I think there's limits to it, right? Just general sportsmanship, and Isaiah has been known as this kind of feisty character and a terrible general manager at times too, but that's another conversation. But yeah, no, I agree. It was quite funny. I don't think, that shows Jordan's competitiveness, but at the same time, it shows that he respects, like, all right, I lost. I'm going to, shake hands and then think about and worry about next season.
Yeah. I was amazed by it. I mean, I had seen this post-game interview before when they lost in Game 7 of in '89, and he said, like, they were the better team, and I had seen that before, but just watching it again, it's pretty remarkable that he's just like, we want to be where they are. Like he's showing so much respect, and he's saying we want to be where they are, but he's so composed, and this is right after like a gut-wrenching loss, and he says he was so hurt by it, but he speaking with confidence, and you can almost tell by the tone of his voice, like, oh, they're gonna get there,
Yeah, and like the other thing too, like I wanted to mention was Isaiah mentioning that it was Bill Laimbeer's idea, like to do the walk-off.
Yeah.
That was another thing, because usually Isaiah Thomas is the one who catches most of the flack for it. So him pointing to Laimbeer, and even now, like I got a notification on my phone like 2 hours ago saying how like Isaiah regrets it, but Laimbeer like remains like his feelings are still the same about it. And I was like, I mean, like it doesn't, like you can see how much more personal it was in that sense, like to these guys. like obviously some of them were friends off the court, but like it stayed off the court. You know what I mean?
But
And
maybe
like
Isaiah being regretful over that is because he was cut out of the dream team. Maybe that's why he feel regret right now.
he
Like
also
maybe
gets the
if
most
I
flack
hadn't
from
done
the
that,
media
he
for it
would be in
too.
the dream team. Maybe that's something we don't know.
Yeah, I know there was a documentary bit about that dream team, and he commented on it, and he's just like, "What can you do? The past is the past. He's not going to dwell on it, and whatever happens, happens." But no, yeah, I agree, and it was interesting too to hear about Jordan hitting the weight room after 7 years in the league. He finally decides to bulk up. It was like, I thought that's like a thing every player does after the season.
It wasn't like, or at least like I guess from like other things I've read, like it wasn't. It depends on the player too. Like obviously now, like it's totally different because everybody's like ideas like longevity, this and this. Like I have to be able to make it through this and everything. But like it was also cool, like to add on to your point about how like Detroit is what motivated that for him.
Mm.
Because like he says how he was the one who wanted to like inflict punishment on like other players, not him being punished all the time. And like that was something I feel like as far as like players, like some players could go, they could learn for themselves as far as like just like how important it is to be able to like take care of yourself in that on that end, because it gives you a better chance as a player, right? Not saying you have to like look like a football player, but like just to be able to like give yourself a shot to be able to like manage like game in game out, because like even now with like all the rules changing and whatnot, like there's still like a physicality to the game in regards to like being able to like box out, rebound when you defend. Like you may not be able to hand check and everything, but like you still have to be able to face up your man, whether it's in the post or at the perimeter. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I'm obviously it was more physical and like in terms of punching at that stage,
Oh
but
yeah.
now everyone's bigger, faster, stronger, so you still have to kind of be built for it. Marco, you have a key takeaway from these episodes?
I think for this last two, I really enjoy like how they took Dennis Rodman character in depth. Actually, I'm loving about this series so far is how they're not just focusing on Jordan, because many
Yeah.
people thought it was going to be like just Jordan related, but like Sky had his time, now Dennis had his time, Phil had a little bit on this episode as well. So I think that's the nicest thing to me, learning about these guys that we don't know so much. People talk about Jordan every week, every day in sports media. So talking about Rodman and Pippen and other guys from their era, that's really nice.
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, I like was taking some notes while watching, and like I barely have any notes about Michael Jordan. All the notes are about other people. So yeah, that's definitely true.
Like he was very good. You see the clips, you see he was the best player, but it's all about the guys who help him get there. So that's what makes him making it different than what I think everyone thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, I just wish I would have been alive to see him, like sit down with your friends, crack open a beer or something, and just watch a game. Because I think that would just be like such a transformative experience. We're just looking from the past, but you hear all these reporters in the documentaries just saying, when he comes to your city, it's a sold out affair. It's like a spectacle. It's not just a game. It's, like a crazy, crazy spectacle.
And it makes it so hard to like comment on the GOAT debate because I don't know what it felt like to see Michael every day. What was maybe if I was there, like his sheer dominance every time he played would have just been so obvious that there's no question.
That's why like I have a hard time like knocking older people who are like there's no way anyone could ever pass Jordan. Cause like the debate does get tiring to begin with, but at the same time it's like for the people who got to live through what Jordan did and like actually got to watch him, like for us, like when we watch LeBron, like it's a like there's like a feeling with it that comes with being able to like talk about what he's done and like everything he's accomplished because we got to witness it. You know what I mean? but like we never got, but like the younger people like us, like never got to actually witness or enjoy what Jordan did. You know what I mean? Like all we have is like game highlights and like documentaries and whatnot. Like we never actually like lived through it. You know what I mean? Like no, we never really got to take in like the global superstar he was, like how much he changed like the entire market of the NBA and like the NBA period when it comes to like how you play and everything, right?
And almost like, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead. Go on.
It's almost like what happens if you reverse roles? LeBron was in the 90s and MJ was in now. Like MJ growing up in the social media age, would he have that same effect, or is it that like at that stage? Because I think a part of it is like MJ elevated the NBA to what it is today in a sense, and I'm not sure if any other player could have done that. But of course, you're looking back in the past, and it's impossible to predict kind of that kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, but talking about like this impact that we see from LeBron, obviously, especially if you are like a fan of maybe the Raptors or the Celtics, that you lose to LeBron every single year in the East, that's kind of awful. But I mean, for us who look at from a different perspective, LeBron lost a lot of finals, you know. So it's not kind of the same thing. Jordan, it seems like he had that feel, oh my God, Jordan's gonna win it again, and he went there and he won the championship again. LeBron won 3-9, you know, so we saw him lose. I think it's not the same, as Daniel said, it's not the same dominance, you know. So obviously, as Abdul said, the debate is kind of getting tired already, but I think we will talk about it for 20, 30 years to come.
Definitely. And as long as LeBron keeps playing, I mean, he's going to have the longevity on him.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, another thing is, like, what if LeBron never wins another chip? And what if this season is canceled? Then you're just going to have everyone saying, oh, but the Lakers were the 1 seed in the West. Like, they would have chip. You know, there's going to be all of that. That's going to add so much to it.
And this is crazy. Maybe the NBA is the league that's suffering the most from Corona, because like every title in the NBA is a fuel for other debates. You know, like who cares if somebody else doesn't win the Champions League this year or any other championship? We're not talking. We're not. There is nobody searching for a player like LeBron is searching for MJ. You know, so
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, you could argue that he's like, you know, he would be the biggest loser in the sports cancellations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's a good topic for the next podcast.
Yeah. Just one more point I wanted to say. In the first episode, I thought it was really interesting that so MJ got drafted third, and then they had the Olympics of '84, which Gary Reinsdorf said he was very lucky that they had the Olympics after the draft, because then MJ showed out. And Bobby Knight said he's the best basketball player he's ever seen. And I think that was like the first time anyone's ever said that. And and like the fact that it came from Bobby Knight is that I think it's kind of interesting, is that as a rookie he comes into the Olympic team and just absolutely just annihilates the competition. And that's kind of right there. It was when MJ started to become, you know, the GOAT. And you have Horace Grant saying, or it was James, forget who it was, but he said that it's either Horace Grant or James Worthy, where he said, I was better than him for 2 weeks.
It was James Worthy.
Worthy on UNC, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that was also quite an interesting takeaway.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly someone who people thought he would become. Like, no one really expected it. Like, it was also, like, it was 84, so, like, middle of the 80s, it's Magic and Larry's league, pretty much. Like, they were the guys. And, like, at that point, like, you talk about, like, other guys you talked about was, like, Kareem as well, as being, like, the greatest ever. Amongst other names, Julius Erving was still in the league. Like, it was so different then, but then like it was like this different type of like flash that he brought to the game, especially with like his athletic ability at the two guard position, because the two guard position was always like one that like it was hard to come by, as far as like there being like a bunch of stars within the league. Like it's still that way to this day. But like Jordan was kind of like that guy, and he just took it over like in a city that needed somebody to boost them up that way. Because Chicago was such a lowly team, and like the only 6 championships they have are all Jordans.
Wow.
So I don't know, for what he did for like Chicago, and like to this day, like his impact there, like he's like a legend everywhere he goes.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was amazing how quickly people recognized that he was the greatest. I know Isaiah gave that quote in the, I'm not sure if it was the 3rd or 4th episode, but said like, we knew Michael was the best. And he's saying this like in reference to their series in '88. So before Jordan had ever even won anything, he's like, we knew Michael was the greatest, so we just had to stop him. And it was just so interesting to hear that acknowledgement before he had won.
That was the year he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year, which is so nuts.
I think Magic said that maybe in episode 1 or 2 that he said that Michael was already the best player. He said something like that as well.
Yeah, Magic's reaction to losing to Michael too.
Oh yeah.
It's like that was really interesting. Like he's like, yeah, well, he's already Magic Johnson, who just had one of the most incredible 10-year runs or not even 10 years, but like 7-year runs in NBA history.
5 titles, 9 finals.
Yeah. And he loses to Michael Jordan and says like, yeah, I deserve to lose to him. Basically accepting like Michael's better than me. And it was only Michael's first championship. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And Magic was never like he always said that he was one of the best players, you know. But him acknowledging that it's really strange for us today. It would be like LeBron saying, yes, Doncic is gonna be better than me, you know.
Or like LeBron losing to KD in 2017 and being like,
yeah,
you know, Kevin showed up. If you know, I want to lose to him.
Yeah, no, that's never happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, about wraps up our first episode, the Yellow Hustle podcast. Be sure to tune in next time.